Okay. Hello, once again. So, I gave you an introduction of post-colonialism. Okay, and as you know that the poet whom we are doing as a part of our post-colonial studies is actually Derek Walcott, and I also differentiated that how colonialism as an experience is different in the Caribbean island from that of India, okay, or say Africa. Because in the Asian continents, for example, when we talk about India and when we talk about Caribbean island, colonialism is very different. So what is it about Africa? And I told you one more, what is it about Caribbean island? And one more thing I told you is this, that when you are reading Derek Walcott, okay, you have to remember that one another writer whom you need to keep in your mind is V.S. Naipaul, because Naipaul's and Walcott's, both of their reactions to colonialism has been quite different, okay, and we can actually keep them side by side. Now, I told you everything about this entire phenomenon, that in Caribbean island, originality is something which is a very ambiguous thing, because the colonizers had completely exterminated, killed the original population. So there is no one called original or aboriginal there, okay, in Caribbean island. So on one hand we have the colonizers, the British, the French, the Dutchess, and on the other hand we have as the population the people of Africa and India and many other parts of the third world countries. These people, their ancestors have come, they actually came to Caribbean island as endangered laborers, okay, as endangered laborers they've come to the island, and now their children, their grandchildren, okay, they had established themselves in that particular island. This is the same case with V.S. Naipaul and also with Derek Walcott. But the difference is, most of their writings, if you talk about the writing of Naipaul and if you talk about the writings of Derek Walcott, then most of their writings, they have a common theme, which is also the theme of this particular poem, that is A Far Cry from Africa, and that is identity crisis, okay. And I mentioned about three important post-colonial theorists, Bhabha, Spivak and Said, and among them the one theorist which is very important for you to discuss, in the discussion of this particular poem, is Bhabha, and Bhabha's concept of hotspot, Bhabha's concept of hybridity, okay. According to Bhabha, colonialism culturally it had done a lot of loss to us economically and socially. But if we talk about the cultural dimension, then colonialism has provided us with a platform where two cultures or more than two cultures are able to come together, okay, more than two cultures, they are able to come together and negotiate with each other. And here what happens is there is a hybridity, okay, there is a mixture of many cultures giving you a new identity. So the concept, the problem here is between these two things, the hybridity on one side and the urge for original identity on one hand. Okay, as we will go through the poem, you will understand that how this crisis is very beautifully brought out by Derek Walcott. Now, if I talk about Walcott and Naipaul was very pessimistic about this. If you read the fiction of Naipaul, the novels of Naipaul, you will see that there is a pessimism. You will see that he is lamenting. He is, one thing is he couldn't connect himself with his native land, that is India. He couldn't connect himself because he had never, he has not been brought up there, okay. And at the same time, he could also not completely identify himself with the colonizer, that is the British culture. So he's not able to connect with any of this. So where is his actual identity? He's very pessimistic about it. But if you come to Derek Walcott again, you will see that he tries to celebrate this hybridity. There is a sense of celebration. There is a sense of what can we say, a positivity regarding this hybridity and the multiplicity of identity. He celebrates it. But in this particular poem, A Far Cry from Africa, it is not completely about the celebration of the hybridity. Rather, the poem shows that how the poet is torn apart. His identity is torn apart, and he cannot understand that with which culture he should identify himself. Should he identify himself with his native land, Africa, or should he identify himself with the British land? Because he owes so much to the British land. The Britishers have given him a language, a culture, the culture which gave him so many things. So okay, even in India also you will find when Indian national struggle was going on, you will see that there were a few number of people who were not against the Britishers, especially the high class people, because the high class people they had this privilege of mixing up with the British culture, and they learned a lot from the British culture, their language, their literature, their culture, and so they are not completely against it. You cannot be completely against the colonizers. Colonization had done us a lot of harm, but at the same time, at a cultural level, they introduced us to to another sphere. Okay, so there are both this plus and minus of this process and the entire phenomenon of colonialism. So let's see what this particular poem, A Far Cry from Africa, is all about. Okay, so do one thing. When you will be you'll be seeing this lecture, you'll be watching this lecture, then please skip the text of the poem A Far Cry from Africa, which is available in the internet. You just keep it at your hand, and then you just watch my video. Then only you can try to connect, because teaching a novel or something, it's easy, but teaching a poem, it's a little bit difficult because we have to go line by line. Okay, so I'm trying to do this. I have the poem in front of me, so when you will be watching the video, please keep the poem in front of you, the text of the poem, because that will make things easier. A Far Cry from Africa. First of all, we have to ponder a little regarding the very title, okay, of the poem. The way Naipaul had his ancestors in India, in a similar way, Walcott had his ancestors in Africa. Okay, his ancestors were from Africa. He was born and brought up probably in the Caribbean island, but of course his original, if there is any original identity, is from Africa. So he is crying. The very title of the poem, A Far Cry from Africa, shows that it's not the poem is not about a happy tone. Okay, so there is a sense of pessimism here, and he is crying. He is crying for his native land, Africa. Why is he crying? There is a dilemma. A beautiful thing is, throughout the poem you will find a dilemma, that to which culture he should support. Okay, this is the dilemma throughout the poem. What happened is this, that in Africa, if you know, you should search this in the internet, that there was a Mau movement, okay, where the inhabitants of Africa, the locals, the aboriginals of Africa, they were struggling for their rights against the colonizers. Okay, Mau movement. And in this Mau movement, Mau process, what happened is this, many of the Africans, they were killed brutally by the Britishers. Okay, and Walcott was very upset with this entire event. He was not, though he was African by blood, but he was not influenced directly by the movement, because he was not staying in Africa. He was staying in Caribbean island. In Caribbean island, there was not any such uprising. So he was not directly influenced by the movement, but yes, at the same time he is sad for his own people, because he has the African blood in him, and at the same time he supports the British culture also, but he is sad for Africans. Okay, so this dilemma is very beautifully brought out in the poem. A wind is ruffling the tawny pelt of Africa. Okay, Kikui, quick as flies, batten upon the bloodstreams of the world. So this wind that has been referred to is that wind of revolution. A change is coming on. Okay, it's a storm. It's a kind of storm which created a turbulence between the